What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video on the Fearless Nick YouTube channel, and in today's video I'll be going through my AFL 2023 round 18 tips and predictions, and obviously, as well as that, like you always do, I'm going to be going back over my round 17 tips from last week and seeing how I went. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. That'd be very much appreciated. I'm on the road now to 500 subs, and I'm trying to get there as soon as possible. So, yeah, a like and sub would be very much appreciated. But anyways, guys, without any further ado, let's get straight on reviewing my round 17 tips from last week. So, looking back on my round 17 tips from last week, once again, I got a pretty decent score, you could say. I got 7 out of 9 for round number 17. But anyways, we'll quickly go back over the games from last week. Starting off on the Thursday night, it was between Richmond and Sydney. Now, I will admit, I did actually change the margin off camera. I do admit that. But it was a pretty good decision in the end, because not only did I get the tip right, I tipped Richmond to beat Sydney, so not only did I get that right, believe it or not, I actually got the margin right as well. I said 13 points. I think in last week's video I said 19 points, but in the back of my mind I was sort of thinking, maybe it could be a little bit closer than that, so I actually adjusted the margin back to 13 points. So yeah, I'll give myself a pat on the back for that tip right there, because that's a bloody good effort to, get the margin right as well. And as it stands right now, Richmond, there's still actually a chance to make the 8. So, yeah, I'm very thankful we did actually come back and win that game. But yeah, I did tip Richmond to beat Sydney there on the Thursday night. So I got that tip correct. Then moving down now to the Friday night, I tipped Collingwood to beat the Bulldogs. Again, it was a pretty good game, to be honest. The Bulldogs, got on top early, similar to how the Swans got on top early against Richmond. But in classic Collingwood fashion, they came back, from quite a big margin down. I think they were actually as much as 20 points down at one stage in that second quarter, the Pies. So, yeah, once again, fair play to Collingwood. They just continue on their winning ways. And to be honest, they don't look like losing another game for a little while, the Pies at the moment. So, yeah, I did tip Collingwood to beat the Bulldogs there on the Friday night. So I got that tip correct. Then moving down now to the Saturday matches. I tipped Brisbane to beat West Coast. No problems there. Brisbane, they were always going to win that. To be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that it wasn't, another 100-point smashing. I would have thought, Brisbane would have won that by almost 100 points. But credit to West Coast, they didn't let that happen. And they actually did restrict Brisbane for, a small period of the match. So fair play to West Coast, I guess, for that. But nonetheless, I did tip Brisbane to get the job done here over the Eagles. So I got that tip correct. Then moving down now to Giants Stadium, I tipped the Giants to beat the Hawks. Got that tip correct there as well. Although Hawthorne, very, very competitive, considering they didn't have James Sicily for this match. I actually thought James Sicily would be returning for this match, but he wasn't. But fair play to Hawthorne, like I said, for putting up a good fight. But I did tip the Giants to get up over Hawthorne in that one, so got that tip correct. And then moving down now to Marvel Stadium, I think a lot of people probably would have got this one right here. It was between the Saints and the D's. I tipped the D's to get up over the Saints in this one, and I got that tip correct. Moving down now to Adelaide Oval, I tipped Port Adelaide to beat Gold Coast. No problems there again. Port Adelaide pulling through in that second half, although Gold Coast were actually leading at half-time, believe it or not. But obviously in the second half, Port Adelaide did prove too strong there for the Gold Coast Suns, so you got that tip correct. Moving down now to the Sunday matches, I tipped Geelong to beat North Melbourne. Not really much to say here. Geelong just the much stronger side, and they got a pretty comfortable win here by 62 points. So I was looking on target, for a potential 9 out of 9 this week, until the last 2 games completely screwed me over. For some reason, I tipped Adelaide to beat Essendon at Marvel Stadium. I don't know why. I just thought maybe Adelaide, they could get a big statement win, away from the Adelaide Oval, but that didn't happen. Essendon, they were just the much stronger side on the day. I don't think Adelaide led at any point during the match. I think it was Essendon who actually led for the entire match. And the final game of the round, I tipped Freo to beat Carlton. To be honest though, I think this game probably could have gone either way. I think it was probably a 50-50. You're probably not going to win the game after, you kick 2 goals in the first half. So I'd arguably say the game was probably almost over at half-time. You know, Carlton, they just looked the way stronger side there. But nonetheless, I did tip the Dockers to get up over the Blues here in the last game of the round. So you got that tip incorrect there, which, like I said, brings me to a total of 7 out of 9 for round number 17. But nonetheless, those were my round 17 tips from last week. Now let's move on to my round 18 tips for this week. Alrighty, so here we are, ladies and gentlemen, round number 18. But the first game we have got on the Thursday night, we have got Sydney taking on the Bulldogs. Huge contest, this one. Obviously, Sydney last week, they were pretty unlucky, to be honest. You know, they were the better side against Richmond for probably like the first half, maybe even the first 3 quarters. But, you know, in that second half especially, Richmond, you know, started to work their way back into the contest, and they really couldn't do anything to stop it, the Swans. They almost looked powerless, whereas the Bulldogs as well last week, they were kind of unlucky. You know, they had a pretty tough task against the Pies last week, and we already know how tough it is to play Collingwood this year. Both of these sides, I think, will be probably almost desperate for a win. The Swans, you know, if they want any chance at making the finals this year, then they have to win this game. It's an absolute must win. And the Bulldogs, they have to win as well because, you know, they have to start, you know, trying to lock up a top 8 spot this season. And I think if the Dogs win this, they're actually level points with Melbourne, who are in 4th. Oh, geez, this is a real coin flip, though, to be honest. I think Sydney at the SCG, I don't know what it is. I think their ball movement is just so much better there. And that they're almost a different side at the SCG, although they have actually dropped a few games there this season. But I think considering, you know, their season is on the line, and considering it is at the SCG, and the Dogs, you know, they've been a little bit up and down, you know, away from home this year, I think I'm going to back in the home team. I think I'm going to tip Sydney in this game here at the SCG. I just think, you know, after last week, they'll be... Well, they looked pretty heartbroken, to be honest, after they lost to Richmond last week, the Swans. And I think the Swans, they'll want to come out here and get a big response, obviously after their disappointing loss last week, after they were, like I said, almost in the box seat to beat Richmond, you know, at halftime. So I'm going to tip the Swans to win this one here at the SCG. And I'm going to tip the Swans to win this one here. In a bit of a close affair, I'm going to say the Swans get up and win this one here by... Let's go 16 points. Moving down now to the MCG, and we've got another huge clash here. We've got Melbourne taking on Brisbane at the MCG at 7:50 on the Friday night. The D's, even though they did get the job done last week against the Saints, I'm not going to lie, they looked a little bit vulnerable. Is that the right word? Vulnerable last week, you know, when it came to, you know, conceding inside 50s. But to be honest, I think the D's do have to really start stepping it up now because yeah, they're starting to come up against, you know, some of the better sides in the competition now. I think this is a huge contest. Like I said, if the D's win, then they're not out of the question of, you know, catching Brisbane, you know, in that 3rd position. Although the one thing that is probably making me lean towards Melbourne in this one is obviously because it's at the MCG. We already know the Lions, you know, they have a terrible record at the MCG. Apart from the semi-final last year, I think they've won 1 game since about 2014. Although I think Brisbane are playing the better footy right now, I just think because it's at the MCG, you can't really trust Brisbane at the MCG. So for that reason and that reason alone, I'm going to be tipping the D's to win this one here. I just think, like I said, at the MCG, I think the D's, they'll be able to get an upper edge here on the Lions, and I'm going to be tipping the D's to win this one here by 15 points. Moving down now to the MCG, and I think this is pretty self-explanatory, this one. I think you have to go Collingwood in this one. No disrespect to the Dockers, but they are playing absolutely awful footy right now at the moment. They kicked 2 goals in a half against the Blues last week, the Dockers, on their home ground. And I'm going to be honest, the Blues, they're probably not even a top 10 defensive side in the competition this year. And the fact they couldn't even score 3 goals at halftime, the Dockers, I think just says it all. And like I said, you know, Collingwood at the MCG, you can't go past them. Like, they are just so strong at that ground this year, the Pies. The only game they've lost at the MCG all year was against Melbourne on Queen's birthday, and they very nearly almost won that, even though they played absolutely terribly. I think the Pies, they'll get a huge statement win for their season here, and I think the Pies will win this one here by 54 points. Moving down now to Heritage Bank Stadium, and we've got Gold Coast taking on St Kilda. One of the more intriguing matches, I'd say, of the round this week. Obviously, if you've read the recent news around Gold Coast, you will know that Stuart Dew has actually been sacked from the Gold Coast Suns, which, believe it or not, makes me lean towards Gold Coast in this match, because every time there's, an interim coach or a fill-in coach who, takes over from the previous coach, more often than not, the side who has the interim coach actually tends to win the game. On paper, you'd say the Saints are the way better side, and I would agree with that. But the fact that it's in Gold Coast, and because there's now an interim coach at the Suns this week, I think they're a definite sneaky chance, I think, here, the Suns, to pinch one here against the Saints. And I think because Stuart Dew has been sacked, I think they'll want to do him proud here and get a bit of an upset win here to potentially even keep their season alive. So for that reason, I'm actually going to tip Gold Coast to beat St Kilda here. Like I said, I know St Kilda are probably the better side on paper, and they probably could have arguably beaten the D's last week if it wasn't for their poor decision-making going inside 50. I just think Gold Coast, they're going to get a big upset win here for their season. I'm going to be tipping the Gold Coast Suns to beat the Saints here at Heritage Bank Stadium by 9 points. Moving down now to Marvel Stadium, we've got Carlton taking on Port Adelaide. Geez, haven't the Blues found some form as of late? I think they've won their last 3 games by over 50 points, so they're starting to pick up some form again here, the Blues, and I think if they win this one, I think they're definitely back on for finals this year. But on the other hand, Port Adelaide, I think they've won 13 or 14 in a row. I've actually lost count. It's actually been that long now since Port Adelaide have lost a game. Although, if I'm being realistic here, I think the fact that it's at Marvel, gives the Blues a chance. And like I said, the fact they've been playing some really great footy as of late, the Blues, they're definitely a sneaky chance, I reckon, to, potentially break Port Adelaide's humongous winning streak. I can't see them getting up here over Port. I think Port, they're just the stronger side, and like I said, they've got a very good record at Marvel Stadium. I think they've won their last 5 or 6 games in a row at Marvel. So I'm going to be tipping Port Adelaide to win this one. As much as I would want to see the Blues get up here in this one, I just think Port Adelaide, they're the stronger side. They should be winning this game. I'm going to be tipping Port Adelaide to win this one here by 16 points. Moving down now to GMHBA Stadium, we've got another absolute blockbuster of a contest here. We've got Geelong taking on Essendon at 7:25 on the Saturday night. Look, Geelong, I can't really read too much into them right now, considering they did only beat North Melbourne last week. So I can't really read too much into that one, although they are in some pretty decent form at the moment, the Cats. Despite their draw they had a couple rounds ago. Whereas Essendon, they're in some really good form at the moment, the Bombers. They did just knock off Adelaide, who, were probably around their mark, in terms of the ladder, around a similar position to them. And they actually beat them quite convincingly. Unfortunately, because it's at GMHBA Stadium, I would love to see the Bombers get up here in this one, considering they've been playing such good footy as of late, the Bombers. I think you just have to go Geelong in this one. I think just because it's at GMHBA Stadium, it gives them such a huge advantage. And I think Jeremy Cameron as well will be back for this game. So they can have Cameron and Hawkins back playing together, which will give them an extra boost. Geelong, I think they'll get home here against the Bombers here at GMHBA Stadium. I think it'll be a really good game, but I think Geelong, they'll get up in this one here, the Cats, and win this one here by, let's go, 20 points. Moving down now to the Adelaide Oval, and we've got the Crows taking on the Giants. Very interesting contest, this one. The Crows had a very disappointing loss last week against the Bombers. After, I thought they would come out and respond to some of the critics that they couldn't win, away from the Adelaide Oval. But I think it's safe to say now the Crows, they're almost hometown bullies. At the Adelaide Oval, the Crows, they're almost a top 4 side. But away from the Adelaide Oval, they're a shell of themselves. So it's really hard to, pick the Crows every week. But on the other hand, do not discredit the Giants. They are in some ripping form at the moment. The Giants, I think they've won their last 3 or 4 games, I think. They're on a little bit of a mini winning streak at the moment, the Giants. But in saying that, I think you just have to go Adelaide in this one, just because it's at Adelaide Oval. They're the much stronger side, when it comes to, playing at the Adelaide Oval this year. I think this will actually be a really good game, though, to be honest. I think it'll be high scoring, intense. The Crows win this one here by 25 points. Moving down now to the second last game of the round, we've got North Melbourne taking on Hawthorne. Look, this might sound harsh, but unless you're a fan of one of these sides, I don't think anyone cares about this game, to be honest. I don't think anyone will be watching this game unless you're a North Melbourne or Hawthorne fan. Like I said, it's a bit of a dead rubber match. Both these sides, can't make the finals. I think the fact that Hawthorne have, taken some bigger scalps against teams like St Kilda and Brisbane, and North Melbourne, I think they've lost 13 or 14 in a row now. So, it's really hard to back in North Melbourne. With all that said, however, I hope North Melbourne are competitive again, because I really like it when North Melbourne, a side who are struggling, are at least competitive. So I'm going to be tipping Hawthorne to win this one here. I just think, like I said, they're the stronger side on paper. To be honest, no one cares. They just want to get this tip right at the end of the day. But I am going to be tipping Hawthorne in this one to win this match here over North Melbourne. I'm going to be tipping Hawthorne to win this one here by 32 points. And moving down now to the final game of the round, we've got West Coast taking on Richmond. The Tigers, like I've said, we've been in some really good form as of late, since Andrew McQualter's taken over. I think we've won 4 out of our last 6 games, which is actually some pretty decent form. And, the 2 sides we've lost to some pretty good sides in, Port Adelaide and Brisbane. Obviously, West Coast, on the other hand, did get their asses handed to them once again by Brisbane. Although it wasn't as big a margin as I predicted. I think I said 105 points against Brisbane last week in last week's tipping video. But for some reason, I don't think this will be as easy victory as a lot of people would probably expect. I think West Coast, especially because it's at Optus Stadium, could really, take it up to Richmond in this game and maybe, even get within, maybe a goal or 2. Although the only thing that makes me nervous for this game is the fact that Richmond actually did lose to North Melbourne last year at a similar time last year. So I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit nervous for this game because I feel like if we're not switched on, I feel like this could be the game where West Coast actually come out and win this game. But with all that said, of course, I'm going to be tipping Richmond to win this one. Obviously, as a Tigers fan, I can't tip against my own side, especially against a side who, are sitting bottom of the ladder, who have won 1 game all year. I'm going to be tipping Richmond in this one here by 46 points. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those were my round 18 tips for the 2023 AFL season. Let's quickly go back over them. I've tipped Richmond to beat West Coast, Hawthorne to beat North Melbourne, Adelaide to beat GWS, Geelong to beat Essendon, Port Adelaide to beat Carlton, Gold Coast as my upset of the week to beat St Kilda, Collingwood to beat Freo, Melbourne to beat Brisbane, and on the Thursday night, I have tipped Sydney to beat the Bulldogs at the SCG by 16 points. So those were my round 18 tips for the 2023 AFL season. But before we go, as always, we are going to have a quick check on the Fearless Nick comp. I don't think I've mentioned it yet this video, so if you want to join my tipping comp, link will be down below in the description and the pinned comment as always. But once again, leading the way on the Fearless Nick comp, we've got Marie T, who is currently in first on 103 correct tips for the season. We've got Ben P in second on 102 correct tips. We've got Max in third on 100 correct tips, who is tied with Shannon, who's in fourth on 100 correct tips as well. We've got Ned in fifth, who's on 98 tips, and just like me, got the perfect margin. So, yeah, good job, Ned. Did very well there, mate. Hugo as well, got the perfect margin as well. He's currently in sixth, just behind Ned there. We've got Cooperell in seventh, who's on 95 correct tips for the season. We've got Darcy T in eighth on 94 correct tips. We've got Claudia in ninth, who's on 94 correct tips for the season as well. I'm currently in 10th. Like I said, got a 7 this week, and I'm on 91 correct tips for the season. We've got Samuel D in 11th, who's on 89 correct tips for the season. We've got Rick H in 12th, who's on 86 correct tips for the season. We've got Christian in 13th, who's on 84 correct tips for the season. And once again, at the bottom of the Fearless Nick comp ladder, after 17 rounds, we've got LTL, aka Louis, who's in 14th and is on 67 correct tips for the season. So, yeah, I'm kind of hoping Louis gets off the bottom at some point, but the way it's going, it doesn't look very likely. Although, he did get a 7, whereas the other guys around him got a 3. So yeah, hopefully, Louis can get off the bottom at some point this season, albeit it does look pretty unlikely. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Those were my round 18 tips for the 2023 AFL season. Remember to comment down below your tips for this week down below in the comments. I'd really like to know your fellas' thoughts on this round. Also remember to join the tipping comp. Link will be down below in the description, as it always is. I'll also put the code to join in the description and the pinned comment as well. Make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe if you did go on to enjoy today's video. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in my next video. Cheers!